Ever hear someone describe another person who is especially good at something as a savant? A fashion savant? A sports fact savant? Of course it's a compliment because we know that means they are crazy good at something to the point of being in touch with it on a whole other level. But what does it really mean to have savant syndrome? Is it just a word we've adopted to mean really good at something? It turns out that a savant is a certain type of person who thinks and processes information in a very unique and special way. Much of what we understand about phenomena like savant syndrome is depicted by Hollywood through actors channeling a syndrome, however sometimes inaccurately, as best they can.
Savant syndrome is a condition where individuals with mental disabilities have phenomenal talents and abilities varying in degrees.
My estimate is there are probably fewer than 50 such people living worldwide.
Individuals who experience this phenomena are unique as this condition is rare. Although the abilities vary, there are more common ones which have allowed researchers to develop categories. Some of these categories of savant abilities are memorization, lightning calculation, calendar calculating, musical ability, artistic ability, and language ability. An example of an individual with one type of profound talent is Daniel Tammet, who experiences lightning calculation. As you will see in this video, Daniel does take some time to process and calculate the math question, and even uses his fingers on the table to visualize the question. After only a few moments of doing this, he easily continues to list of the many decimals in the answer. He could go into the hundreds. The researchers who led the study on Daniel point out how savant syndrome prompts researchers to rethink what intelligence is and how to define it. We can see from this video that there is a fine line between profound talent and profound stability, and it is hard to define.
Let me just choose another one.
Next, we asked him to divide 13 by 97.
.1340206.
That's as far as my calculator goes.
Okay.
Brilliant.
185 567.
You're carrying on.
I'm carrying on. Do you want me to stop or?
How many points can you do it to?
100, nearly 100.
At this point, we borrowed a computer that gave us the answer to 32 decimal places.
Okay. 0.1340206185567.
As he went on, every single number was correct.
In the 1988 film Rain Man, starring Tom Cruise, who plays Charlie Babbitt, a young, selfish entrepreneur who, after losing his wealthy, estranged father, realizes he has a brother to whom the entire family fortune has been left. Here's the twist. His brother Raymond, played by a young Dustin Hoffman, has savant syndrome. As you might have guessed, Raymond has no interest in money as he has no understanding of its value, but rather he is consumed by his routines and tics, including books, reciting of facts, counting, and sorting. Throughout the trip, Raymond and Charlie have different experiences where Raymond's skills from his savant syndrome are showcased, such as a scene where, because they are low on cash and go to a casino so Raymond can count cards and win at blackjack. It does not take long for Charlie's selfish ways to subside as he begins to bond with and develop an appreciation for his unique brother and wishes to care for him. The film has some realistic depictions of savant syndrome, such as the scenes where Raymond becomes panicked and alarmed when his routine is disrupted. The reason for this being that an individual with savant syndrome thrives on consistency, and we can see here how someone with savant syndrome may actually react when placed in a stressful or unpredictable situation. The type of talent we saw with Daniel Tammet was also depicted in the film Rain Man, where the doctor asks Raymond to perform calculations of a particularly difficult level. As we will see in the video, Raymond is portrayed as closer to the severe range of handicap that an individual who has savant syndrome might be, compared to Daniel, who is a highly functioning individual whilst having the same syndrome. While Raymond might represent a percentage of those with savant syndrome, It is important to recognize that the character does not wholly represent all individuals with Savant syndrome, as it varies in degrees.
Raymond,
Yeah?
are you good with numbers?
Yeah. After this.
Ray, can we try something?
Yeah.
Do you know how much 312 times 123 is?
38376.
He's right.
What?
He's right.
He's right?
Yeah. He's a genius. Ray, do you know how much the square root of 2,130 is?
46.15192304. 2304.
That's amazing.
Other scenes in the movie exaggerate or otherwise unrealistically show instances involving an individual with Savant syndrome. One scene in particular shows Raymond glancing at a box of spilled toothpicks and knowing exactly how many lay on the ground. This is an exaggeration of the type of heightened talents for counting someone with Savant syndrome may have. While not every individual with Savant syndrome employs the skills of increased mathematical skills, some do. In the movie, we also see Raymond depicted as an autistic savant. However, the two are not necessarily one and the same. The film portrays autism and Savant syndrome as the same thing and uses the terms interchangeably. This is inaccurate because although these can be comorbid with one another, they do not necessarily always occur together. Interestingly enough, after the movie, there was a surge in research surrounding this syndrome, and the most information we now have has come out of the last 15 years.
Even though we don't know the exact cause, facts such as knowing that 10% of autistic individuals have Savant syndrome, whereas in other disabilities it occurs in less than 1%, are a segue to a better understanding. While Savant syndrome is commonly associated with autism spectrum disorder, a condition which affects normal brain development, it is not limited to these individuals. 50% of individuals with Savant syndrome fall into the broad spectrum that is ASD. 1 in 10 individuals with ASD will possess a remarkable ability, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have Savant syndrome, or that their ability is to the extent of those who have Savant syndrome. It also occurs in individuals with other developmental disabilities or central nervous system injuries or diseases, accounting for the other 50%. In these cases, there is no concrete explanation as to what causes the syndrome, although researchers have made gains in understanding the syndrome, especially in the last 15 years.
Little Rain Man within each of us.
Researchers have claimed that Savant syndrome is so complex to understand, and because of these individuals' extraordinary abilities, that no one will fully understand human cognition until Savant syndrome is fully understood. Although Savant syndrome was not shown as accurately as it could have been in the movie Rain Man, it did bring awareness to a disorder not well understood by the general public.